In this video, we'll look at the process of deriving the feature definition list for manholes. All right, so we're going to be going back to the spreadsheet and we're going to be filling out our list here. All right, so we're going to be starting by going to the manhole section. This is where we're going to be identifying how many feature definitions we need for these manholes. So I'm going to have junction boxes, and I'm also going to have a type A, a type C, and a type S. Now additionally, what we want to consider is the type of frame and cover that is going to be going on these different structures. So I may just have, 3 different types of junction boxes, a 5x5, a 6x6, and a 7x7, but that list is going to build out quite quickly for all of the different cover combinations that I'm going to have on those. And it's important to account for those different types of covers if it's going to affect any of your readouts. So for instance, for this, the type A10 through A9 and A8 and A7, that is going to relate to the height of the top cell. And so we do want to account for all of those different options. And so now with your initial list made, you're going to give this to the hydraulics team and let them identify anywhere you missed a feature or if you need to build it out any further. And again, you might want to consider at this point to get a clear naming convention for these that is going to be useful for them as the user. Again, we can minimize this list by grouping them into size ranges. So this is going to be similar than what I was talking about with the inlets, but we don't have to consider as much hydraulically when we think of manholes. So the graphical differences are pretty similar to inlets. We have the bottom size and shape and cover types, the cover size. Something that we're going to consider with both inlets and manholes is if you're going to be using cones. We are only going to be able to vary the height of either the bottom structure or the cone structure. So we can't do both. And we're not going to be able to extrude along a slope plane. So in the cone section, we're really not going to have that extrusion. So you're going to be thinking about default sizes, 4-foot height, 6-foot height, and you're going to have a separate feature definition for each one of those possible setups. Another option is not to model the cone at all, and then you're just going to adjust the height in the bottom vault completely, and then maybe through attribution you could say whether or not it has a cone and what height that cone is going to be. Same concept with steps or adjustment rings. This is better handled through an attribution instead of graphically. And then the construction class elements are going to be very similar to what we saw with an inlet. We're still going to have that varying height, so we're going to have a top cell and a bottom cell, as well as a plan cell. Hydraulically, we don't have as many considerations as we had with the inlets, so you're just going to be looking at the benching method. And then, depending on the loss method that you're using, if you're using HEC 22 3rd edition for losses, then the bottom size is not going to affect your hydraulics. Going back to the list, at this point you're also going to want to consider your existing structures, and there's different approaches you can take this. Sometimes people like to duplicate the proposed structures exactly to have available for existing structures. So this is going to double the amount of features that you're going to have to create and manage. I'm going to take a more simplified approach where I'm having a more generic representation of each existing structure. So instead of having for all the different sizes of a type B, just have one type B where I'm using the most common size as the graphical model for each of these types. And then as your workspace is in production and this is being used, you might find areas where you need to expand this out. But this is generally a good starting place. And then I've done something similar with my manholes where I have one existing junction box and one existing manhole type.